Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of Average Andy's podcast. This is John here for our holiday special. So last week we talked about the raid so far, what's been easy and hard for us, how our team's doing, a little bit of player retention, a little bit of gearing. This week, I think we're going to go into a bit of, um, progress focused mindset as far as extending and re-clearing and a few other things involving that. But before we do that, I'm going to flip it over to Sindula. Sindula, you got a little introduction for yourself?
Of course I do. Merry Christmas
Merry Christmas. Happy
to
holidays.
all 12 people who listen to us. But
Yep.
yeah, we want to do a pop-up holiday special and talk about I think we hit the first wall, right, in the raid. This is
Yes.
the first time things got hard, and so stuff is getting real. And so we have stuff to talk about in terms of that and how it affects us and where we think we go moving forward because obviously in a tier that's kind of lighter in the beginning, you feel very good, and then you hit that first point where the raid gets hard. So we want to talk about that.
Yep. And yeah, happy holidays again to everybody. So I guess we can start here with speaking of holidays, I guess scheduling raids around holidays. You want to start there?
Sure, I can definitely start there. And it so for us, our approach was definitely just we're going to raid the week of Christmas. And honestly, I think for most people, unless you live out of state, um, even if you do, to be honest, a lot of people just go home for, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, maybe a day or two after and come back. But regardless, there's always gonna be people who can't make it. And so our approach was we should we're not planning on excuse me, having like this be a progression week. It was more let's see who shows up and we're just going to make what we can out of it, right?
Right.
So this week our intention is, Wednesday, we're just going to re-clear and see what happens, but after that in terms of smolder on progression, it depends like on who we have, and I think we're getting lucky with like some people like, "Oh, now I can make it" or something, but I the reality is holidays, you can't really deny like it'd be silly to be like this is really serious. We have to make these days unless
Yeah.
you're already made that apparent that progression was an important thing. But at the same time, why would you be no guild that is serious? I don't want to say serious, that's the wrong word. No guild that's like pushing for Hall of Fame or something or is super intense is gonna not have made that clear. And like for us, if we were like, you have to make the holiday week, it would just be, I think, silly.
Yeah. And I guess one thing we kind of lucked out on as well is that Christmas this week fell on a Monday. Um,
Yep.
so our raid days are Wednesdays and Thursdays. So, most people like will just take the long weekend, maybe take like Monday and Tuesday and be back by Wednesday. But I know next year it's a leap year, so it's on like a Wednesday. So, I mean that might be a little more difficult. But we've been fortunate this week. We'll definitely be able to raid. I saw a lot of guilds that just like aren't raiding this week, but I
Yeah,
think
I'm rating this week. Yep.
yeah, I think we're fortunate where, we have, and we also have, we still have like a healthy roster. We lost a few people, but I think we still have like a 25 man roster. So, even if a few people couldn't make it, we could still probably like make something happen. Even if say we were like progging Tindril or, I know we're still in Smolder on now. It's not really like that difficult of a boss, but maybe even if 20 or like 19 people can make it, we could like still do the first like five bosses or something that people were still around to do. But yeah, we've been really fortunate, lucky enough we're still able to raid this week. I think I'm trying to think for Thanksgiving. I think we actually just like took a poll and saw if people could raid like that Monday instead of that
Hmm.
Thursday, and we had enough people. And luckily, it was still early enough in the tier where it was like I think we were like still doing AOTC at that point, so we were like fortunate then. But I guess yeah, we've been kind of lucky this year, holiday wise, right?
Yeah, and Thanksgiving I feel like is not as much as a maybe I'm wrong, but I
Well,
feel
for
like
for us,
think
half our
thanks
guild is Canadian, so they don't even,
yeah, they don't
shout out
even
to
have
all you
Thanksgiving the
boys,
same day.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just not as even in general though, I feel like Thanksgiving is just not as big of a deal as Christmas. Christmas you it's the apex holiday, I feel like. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
harder to schedule around, people
Yeah.
will go back and stuff. And that's like kind of the one time of year if you live away. Or at least in the past, like for me, that's I spend definitely the most time home during Christmas. And that so it's just hard. And you have to like accept that, right? You're not
Mhm.
unless you've already made that very clear and you're some hardcore progression guild, like super intense, pushing as high as you can. But for us, it's just, we'll see what we have. And Fortunately, I think it's just another raid week. I don't think we're really
Yeah.
missing many people.
We were gonna miss our one tank, but now he said he's able to
He's
make
back, yeah.
midnight. So yeah, we've been very lucky and fortunate for sure.
No, we definitely have. And then and kind of bleeding into that, we've had this conversation, and I know how I feel, but re-clearing versus extending. We chose to extend as long as possible this year. I think going into it, and even last year, I think we went into it saying we should extend as long as possible, but it just turned out you got gear. You basically were mythic item level in like the first 3 weeks, even as a, you know,
Last tier?
skimpy guild like us. Yeah, like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
got
yeah.
geared so quickly that there was no reason to not extend, and the bosses got hard very quickly. So we extended on the fifth boss. This tier, we're on Smolder. I feel like this is the first time ever in this guild's history that we've been on a true progression boss and have not extended.
Um,
How do you feel?
the last
Okay, we can talk about that.
Well,
But
yeah,
what was the last time we
the
didn't?
last time I'm thinking is maybe Council of Blood. I
We did
think
extend on that.
we did, but we definitely re-cleared a few times before like finally extending on it. But yeah, I think you're right. This is probably the first time it's like a true like not extend, and honestly, I think we made a crucial error of not extending last week and just getting it down because I think this week, because of the holidays, we were gonna re-clear no matter what. So I think we kind of dropped the ball on that, and we can talk about this later. Like people like the blunders we had, the 2 nights we've been on Smolder on. Um, but I think we should have extended last week and just got the kill, and then we were re-clearing this week anyway. But I mean that's just my thoughts on it.
I agree and disagree. I think yes, for the instant gratification of killing the boss right now, you could have just to see our world rank have gone up or just stayed at the pace we were going at. But I think world rank right now is like super inflated.
Yeah.
And I actually think, to be honest, that most of the people who kill it before us at this rate will have killed it before us because they extended, not because they're better. And Smolderon is the first mini wall, and I think the if we just played better on Thursday, so whatever
Two
that is
four
now,
days
4 days
ago.
ago, we
Yeah.
could have killed it
Mm-hmm.
easily if we just had a good pull. But we didn't, and so we don't have the kill as opposed to someone who extended this week and could have re-killed it. And obviously, like our reclear sucked at everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever. There's always bad re. Some guilds are better or worse, probably, or just you can have bad days or good days. But I feel like if you force into it, you're just kind of focus on the short term gain, which in I don't know 2 months won't matter because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, all that matters is when you kill, Firac. And so, honestly, even going into Tendril, people don't really feel it, but having more item level is actually a big thing, especially when people get like their best trinkets possibly in the vault or get best trinkets when we rekill, which I don't think we've been very lucky with any of that. But regardless, like, yes, we could have extended and gotten the Tendril, the
Smolderon.
Smolderon kill quicker, but that's just like kind of I feel like instant gratification as opposed to it doesn't matter because if Smolderon is hard, then Tendril is gonna feel
Yeah.
near impossible. So
Yeah, I get what you're
yeah,
saying
I
for
get it.
sure.
We're gonna
Yeah.
fall behind in rank right now, but the guilds that we're competing with for rank are going to be stuck on Tendril forever. And then after that, you have to go to the actual hardest boss, which is Firac, and do that too. And who's to say like what happens with nerfs and stuff? That's always impossible to dictate like what Blizzard's gonna do. So if we're
Mm-hmm.
just assuming like the environment stays relatively similar, I don't even think they'll nerf Tindral to the point it'll be like a breeze until after we kill it. They may nerf it again and like deal with something that's kind of like
Yeah.
maybe like if your comp is better, like easier to deal with and stuff, just to help
Uh,
goes out who like obviously aren't min maxing their comp. But I don't actually think killing Smolder on right now matters that much,
yeah. I mean,
me
I
personally.
guess I kind of agree, but like at the same time, I just like want that dopamine hit of having the a lower world rank. But
Oh
nah,
yeah.
I mean I get what you're saying. Like obviously the items we've gotten are gonna help us long term. But yeah, I was just looking for dopamine, and I think personally like I mean I'm sure after we kill them, they're gonna hit like Tendril and Fire Act with like jailer-esque nerfs. Because I feel like Faded is gonna come out in like early April or something, and the expansion's gonna come out in like July, and like no one's gonna have cutting edge by then. There's only gonna be like 800 guilds or whatever like Jailer was, and then they're gonna like hit it hard with nerfs to help people get cutting edge for the last patch.
Well, yes, I think they will, but regardless of all that, because we even killed a jailer before that, but I'm saying, in my opinion, I think it's better to accept the fact that we were a little bit slow on Smolderon and just
Yeah,
go into the next two with a much more realistic perspective. Like this is an actual prog boss, and I think it's also like Smolderon's kind of the wake up call this year. We went into it like head full of steam. We had better prep, but I still do think, regardless of everything that's happened on Smolderon, we were just a bit more ready for this tier and everything, like we talked about in our last episode and stuff. But um, I don't think Smolderon will actually be a big hiccup, and the best example is us in Vault when we hit like if Smolderon is bad, then
Dathia,
Dathia was
yeah.
was just apocalyptic.
Well,
Basically, it was horrible, but we still ended up very good. I think for like
yeah, we did
a
we did
guild of
well. Yeah,
our day like our raid times and commitment and stuff. So I think taking having to deal with the hiccups on Smolderon is good. Um, something what do you think? And I think this is something we wanted to talk about, but just Smolderon in general. What do you think is going wrong, or why do you think it's? I don't even know what we're at. Do you know what pull count we're at on
we're
Smolderon?
at
Probably like 100
no,
something.
we're at like 90. It's either 91 or 98. It might be 98 because we were like chain pulling at the end of the night. What's going wrong? This boss, I feel like we could have killed it like last week probably, but we had like I feel like this is just like the what's that law, Murphy's law or something? Everything that
Yeah, Murphy's law.
yeah, it's like
Whatever can go wrong will
Kangaroo
go
will go
wrong.
wrong. It's
Yeah,
like dude, our healer got banned, our tank missed like an hour, he like slept in or something. I think like
yeah,
you were late
yeah. I was
for
gone for
an
the first
hour
like
or
45 minutes.
something. And then like this week our reclear was like the worst. Like we didn't have our Mistweaver monk for the like first half of the first night, and it was just like, oh my god,
Yeah.
it's just like we just wasted so much time. And other than that, like I think we were progging on the fight fine. I mean, obviously people are like eating flame waves too much, but I mean, I think that's probably a problem in any guild that's not, like a Hall of Fame guild, right? Like the
Even
people
yeah, no,
like
that was a problem. Even like world first progression, like people that was the biggest blocker is that
it's
it's.
just
I
hard.
mean,
There's so
and
many.
before the nerfs, it was insane to try to
Oh
actually
yeah,
dodge and live, and now it's
yeah.
a lot more feasible. But yeah, it's just like insane, and yeah, that's what I feel like that's a boss where you actually just have to do what we were doing, and just like the second something goes wrong, just be like,
Just
okay,
wipe.
fuck it, go
Yep.
next,
Just go
because
again.
there is nothing you can tell people or explain. Like it is literally just
Just
play better.
dodge.
Just
Yeah.
don't die. Just
Yep.
like live and do your damage you're supposed to do,
Yep.
which
Because
isn't
it's
like
it's it's a very mechanically simple fight. It repeats itself after each intermission,
yep.
so it's like once everyone lives past the first intermission, like you know the whole fight. Like actually at that point, you can just call for like a wipe if like three people are dead because like they know the fight. You can like basically kill it. I'll say if you can have everyone alive after the second intermission, then like any pull can be a kill pull for your guild. Like it's
Yep.
literally just repeating. If you can get like the baiting down for the first two, you'll be fine. Um,
Uh,
and it's funny because like the healer came in, the one that was banned the first week. So this is like he was progging it this week for the first time. He's like, oh my god, these lava waves are so hard to dodge. After the nerfs too, I was like, dude, you have no idea what it was like
yeah.
before this. It's like crazy how many there were. But yeah, honestly, like you said, it's just like a play better boss. Like there's no really like there's a little bit of
Yeah,
strategy
there
positioning, but like we have that like down pretty pat. I think
yeah,
it's
everyone knows it's just actually you just need to stay
just gotta
alive. If you
perform.
can't,
Yeah,
you just have to do it. Like you can't die early in the fight. And honestly, I think if you get to that fight with our item level, like 19 out of 20 people alive when you
hmm
lost, you're probably gonna kill the boss. Like it's just that simple. But it is difficult because the DPS check isn't non-existent, and I think that's in part due to the like toning back of how quickly you can get to top item level this patch. Like I think in when we re-kill it, it'll feel a lot easier because everyone
Oh
will be
yeah.
what, like 489 item level or something, like 7 item levels
Yeah, it'll be
higher,
like when
six,
we
7 item levels
re-killed
higher.
Rashok and like one shot him or whatever. The
Yeah,
first time,
exactly.
yeah.
Like it just won't be as like the mistakes won't be as punishing and all. But when people die, it's just
I mean, it's
you. It
tilting.
feels like you never lose one person at a time. It feels like a soak will happen, which is always the hardest part, right? The soak and
Yeah,
dodge,
yeah.
regardless if you're
And the
soaking or if
healing
you're the
absorbs,
one
yeah.
running out. Yeah, it's just like three people will die randomly, and then it's just over. Also, uh, I think this is fine to talk about even as a guild of our perspective, like them changing the
Mhm.
orbs, going down one, sure, cool, great, removing the ability to use the list weak aura and stuff, like their obsession upon creating private auras, I feel like at every stop they've done it, and this is not at all an original thought, but every time they try to make something not weak aura-able, it's the worst mechanic they could possibly do. And like you think of Neltharion that was the only fight in that raid you felt like you needed a weak aura to help you. And then same thing with Smolderon. Like you want to create this thing where there's a set order of people who need to soak an orb, and that's the thing you choose to make a private aura.
Yeah.
I think that's so dumb.
Uh,
What do you think about that?
I mean, I think private or like some they works like Blaze on Fire Island, that's a private aura and that's fine. Like
Yeah.
sometimes they're fine and but like ones like this, like they know we're just gonna make a workaround around it. Or not us, but you know the world first people. And I think it's like stupid. And honestly, I wouldn't care if it was like you couldn't make a weak aura about it if there was a way for me as the raid leader to see who actually had the things, and I could just call it out
Yep.
by looking at the uniframes, like yeah, make it a private order. Just let me look at the uniframes and tell who has the buff. But like that's just not an option. They expect like 20 people to coordinate, or three out of 4 out of 20 people, I guess it was, to coordinate. You know, like I'm gonna go first, and like half the time it's like I swear that mechanic goes on like two or three melee, like always. I just
Yeah, always want to go first. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like then you got like people that like never talk in Discord and they're never gonna like call their names out. I mean, which is like probably that's more of a problem for guilds at our stature, where people are less communicative and comms. But it's just I don't know, it just doesn't work. And it's funny because you didn't do this right, I don't think, but they had a boss in Battle for Desire Lore, King Mekator. Do you know that one?
Yeah, Megatorg. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So on Mythic, they had three people had to get in like these little. Do you know the mechanics on it or no?
I know he had to get into something and then like solve
Yeah, so you
something
had
or
to like you
something.
had
I
to
don't know. I
like
didn't do
so you
it.
had to like get in a robot and you like you had like an extra action bar, and on the extra action bar there were like three different buttons or four different buttons that were like different like raid markers, like skull, I don't
Uh huh.
whatever it was, triangle, square, whatever. So you would get in, but you couldn't see your own marker. You could only see somebody else's. So three people would get in a robot, and you'd have to like have one person call out the other two people's colors, and then the one of the other two people would have to call like the person's color out. So when we did that fight, three people would go in, and there wasn't like a weak core for this back at the time because this was like like 5 years ago, and weak cores weren't like as intrusive into the game. But um, like we had three people go in, and I would literally have to like call out like a team leader, be like, okay, like this guy's named Tachi because he was like really vocal. I was like, all right, Tachi, you're the leader. You call. He would call two people out first, and then somebody else will call him out. And that's just like I guess that's kind of like a way of where it was like kind of a private aura because there was no weak aura for it. But like I remember doing that fight and that shit was miserable. So if you're gonna make mechanics like that, like it just just let us use like weak auras for it. Like I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's the same thing with even like Mythic Plus, where you get to the point. So you can do anything because mistakes are forgiving on lower keys where it doesn't matter, but everything in the game is kind of tuned around the fact that there's two things. Either you have a weak R that helps you coordinate it, or you have communication. And in this setting, like in the Smolderon or State or Neltharion, I don't know if their expectation is that we're just like in Discord and like, okay, imagine Neltharion without a weak R. You just be like,
That is impossible. Like you
I
can't.
don't even know what you
You
would do. I
can't.
can't even think of a scenario where you'd say it. But even Smolderon is about because what you said, like two melee DPS get it, and at the same time they're like, okay, I'll soak first, and
Yeah. They just run into it.
because they think, yeah, they think they said that they're just like walking towards it and they blow each other up. it's a stupid mechanic to try to implement this on, and it's the same problem I think that's happened like as Mythic Plus has evolved and people have gotten better at it. It's the same situation where there becomes a key level where it is actually impossible without communication.
Yeah.
And they've avoided this. Like I think um and I think I even I can't remember when I did this, but or I was listening to someone talk about it. Freehold's a good example of a dungeon where you actually don't need that much communication because you think about Freehold and like the trash isn't that hard. The bosses are pretty hard, but not like they're tolerable, or at least you don't think of communication being
You don't.
the
Yeah, it's not.
barrier.
No, it's not.
The only thing in Freehold was like you had to kick
The
those mages like
the
mass chill
frost
thingy. I can't
blast.
remember what they're
Yeah,
called. Yeah,
frost
yeah,
blast. Yeah.
those big frost thingies, but those were you'd pull like two, even if you pulled three at a time. You probably have stops and stuff to
Stops
get
and
around the
yeah,
big bad
yeah.
cast. But in Mythic Plus now, that's not a thing. That is the exception, not the norm. Where if anything goes off now, like you need, like, if you let a bad cast go off and there's a ton of them, you just wipe.
Yeah.
And it's the same. Like you're taking that and escalating it to the highest degree in raid where it's something like the Swolderon orbs, which aren't as severe as Neltharion, or going back Neltharion, and that's the thing you choose to make a private aura. That just feels bizarre. There's like, yeah, like you said, Blaze on Fire Act, like just having people
Yeah,
adapt to the
like
lines around them is
yeah,
cool,
that's
but
fine.
mechanics like Smolderon sucks. It just feels bad to not have a. That
Uh,
just should be something that you're allowed. The raid leader needs something to help communicate, and you're just denying it.
it
It
is
just feels weird.
fine. And I've heard I think Dratnos say this a lot. It's fine to use them on mechanics that like you can YOLO. Like he always gives the example like on Anduin. Uh, you know how you had like the purple and the yellow circles.
Yeah,
Like that's like a good private aura because like you can just spread out and be like, oh, okay, like this person's my color and that person's the other color. Like don't run into them. Like that's like a perfect example of make that something like that a private aura where it's easily identifiable like visually and you can see it and it's something you don't need a weak aura for because like we didn't use a weak aura for because it was you could just spread out and run into your color. So
yeah.
I think like if it's something like that, that's fine. But like, or if it's something like the ducks on council, like that's a private aura. Okay, that's fine. It's an easy mechanic. The bleeds on Forgotten Experiments, that was a private aura. That was that's
Or
fine.
even think about like Rygolon positioning. We did have a weak. There was a weak that like glue your circle, but like
Yeah, you
I
didn't need
didn't.
to do that.
That basically did nothing. Like you knew after the first like 10 pulls where you were
Yeah,
going every time. Like that kind of thing is awesome.
yeah,
That's fun to do because if you can pre-assign it,
yeah. You can do that
great.
outside
Like
of raid.
I get that. Like if you want something where the work should be put in before like prep for the fight, that's awesome. Like
Yep.
I think you shouldn't have a weak art tell you where to go all the time. But for something like this, it just feels like they have like a significant misread on what is hard about a fight and why it should be hard. More importantly, why it should be hard. And
I
it's just frustrating for like someone like us.
and like
Because the better players you have, the easier it is to adapt to it, or
oh
the more
yeah.
invest people are, like veteran, maybe is the right word. But it just feels bad when we can't, like, you should be allowed without having to everyone click a macro. All it's doing is adding an extra barrier
It's
to
just yeah.
entry as
It's
opposed to
literally
making the fight more difficult. We now we just have everyone click a weak R, and we have like Seraphim and Soul, who obviously took the longest to get it and like figure it out, but like all it does is add an extra barrier to entry. It's not actually making the fight more difficult, it's making preparation in the technological way more difficult, like
It's
weak
not. It's
R
not.
way more
Yeah, it's not
difficult.
like it's good prep like Rygolon. Like you can pre-assign positions. It's like annoying
Yeah,
prep. Like oh, this guy has an outdated weak aura, or like oh he doesn't have this part of the liquid weak auras pack, or oh this guy like just doesn't have it at all. And it's like you gotta like sit there and make sure everyone has the same version and blah 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 blah. It's just like actually so annoying. And
yeah,
I
just
I would
tacky excessive
and I
time.
would love to see like the Blizzard training devs or whatever the hell they are, like the people that test the stuff. Like I would love to see them do that for like 20 pulls with the orbs and just like try to communicate that. And they probably just
Exactly.
wipe every time, right? Yeah. So I don't know.
It's just like it turns into like a completely coincidental, like situationally beneficial thing where you get
It's a lot of big words.
a melee, a yeah, like a melee, a range, and a healer or something, or not even healers, because some healers are melee, but you just get the perfect set of people, and they happen like the melee person calls it first, and the range person isn't really thinking about going first because they can keep going or something. They're not as greedy, but even though it's not that hard as melee to like kite the orb, it's just still annoying the fact that we have to hit this extra button. Like Blizzard should know by now. Where
Yeah.
people are going to
They're gonna
figure out
figure
a
out
way
a
to
way
get
around
around
it.
it. There's no
Absolutely.
point in trying to make private Rs for shit like this where people will just figure it out anyways and figure out a way to automate it. There's just no reason to. I just don't. It just makes it more punishing for people like us, and the world first skills will always find a way around it with automation. So
You know how
if you're gonna
like
do private Rs, make it easier.
you know how like they've been like very like ever since that one patch in Shadowlands, they've been like very like receptive to community feedback, and they've been like
Yeah.
obviously like making the game better for the players instead of like I feel like this is like the one of the last things they're just like hammering down on like no fuck you guys, like we're making private wars like here to stay. Like I don't know, it just like feels against their like philosophy for me, their like new philosophy, I guess it's like the old philosophy still to me.
Yeah. I hope they learn from it because things like you said, like the Fire Act Blaze, that's cool to have to deal with. And it's like honestly a fun mechanic to just work around and like learn.
Yeah.
Everyone will figure it out naturally, just how to move around. And when because the also cool thing about like the Fire Act Blazes is that as someone who gets one, you can plant where uh if you're like the first one, if you're an earlier blaze that gets like targeted,
Yeah.
you can stand in new ones and stuff, and it goes off. And then you move to not scare people. But that kind of stuff feels good. Something like we talked about just feels bad. It
Yeah,
just feels
it's
actually
yep.
net worse to have to deal with. So yeah, I hope they figure it out and just like are more receptive to us being like this sucks. Like it's just adding an extra step for us to have to progression like prog through, and
Mhm.
it's just not fun. But
Yeah.
I think
100
we said
100%
our
agree.
piece.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
We said our piece. So
Yeah.
the next one is how we make up lost time, which is something we kind of talked about earlier, but really it's this here is probably the best example is you go through the first 6 bosses, it's free, to be honest. Like even for
Yeah.
us,
Oh
it
yeah.
was really
It's like
easy.
less than 30
And now you're
kills.
hitting the real progression bosses, where it's like Smolderon, which is kind of hard. Like 100 pull bosses, especially with Smolderon, it's like a very high tempo, just go, 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 go. Like people have to figure it out. But then you get to Tindril, which is actually like that's a boss where we probably will have to stop and be like, do you guys actually get what you're supposed to do here? Right.
Yep.
And we have to
Yep.
pre-assign positions and people have to play well just to know what's going on. There's dynamic dispels and all this stuff. So how do you think, and we've dealt with this before, but what's your game plan for making up the time we've lost on Smolderon and kind of
Yeah.
watching ourselves creep up in ranks?
So, I think I said this to you earlier. I don't know if I said it on here or not, but I think on Tendril and Fire we need to have like an Anduin-esque type of situation where we just like do like a lot of like it's a fight. Luckily, it's fights you can do this outside of raid, but we need to do like so much prep outside of raid, just make sure everyone's on the same page and like reading everything we post to them. Because like you said earlier, like yeah, I know I wanted to kill Smolderon last week by extending and like have instant gratification, but obviously I think long term it's better that we didn't extend and we re-cleared and got that extra gear. I do think it's beneficial for that, and then like the prep we do, it just has to be like so much more involved, and like we have to like actually like follow up with people and make sure, like you said, they're understanding the mechanics, and like fights like this, it's like something you got to take phase by phase as well. Like you got to do like a phase one, like review and intermission. I guess intermissions, whatever. It's dragon riding, but phase one. Even then though, like you need to like have okay tanks. You go on the left side because it's like the slower side, stuff like that. So it's definitely a fight where I think the more you prepare, like you can just like make up for lost time in these later fights by just like over preparing, like over communicating to your players, making sure on the same page. And on one thing that's like super important, I think, is like, and we had this problem last year, is like, and maybe it's something we can do. Like, we need to make sure we have the same 20 people on, for each fight. Like, especially
Yeah.
a fight like Tindril, where it's like very comp dependent. Like, we need to ask these people, I think, do you have any plans in the upcoming like 4 weeks or whatever where you think you'd be late or miss a raid or something? Because that I think that might like have to factor into decision making.
No, I completely agree. And it's going into these things. And I will give the timeless example to me that like is burned in my brain of the first time we did Forgotten Experiments last year when we it was not a hard fight, but we just weren't ready to deal with what was hard about it.
Mhm.
And it was just super, I think, like jarring for us because it's one thing if you are you understand what's going to be hard and your players just aren't executing, that's something you're ready for and deal with.
Yeah,
You
like
just kind of like,
Smolderon.
why are you guys messing this? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, why are you messing this up? But when it's something that you actually get to a point where you just aren't prepared to deal with, that's when things get a little bit more iffy, I think.
Yep. 100%.
And I think after that point, we were we were way more prepared for everything. But that was just kind of a lapse where we didn't think the fourth boss of the raid. Also, that boss just sucked. But outside of that, that was like a brutal moment where I don't think any of us like actually like I remember talking to you about it. And we were just like, what is actually going wrong? We were like looking at logs and stuff, and we were just like, we
We were
just
just
don't
like all on
like the
the
dispel
different
cadence is just not
pages.
right. Or,
Yeah.
yeah, we just didn't know what to do. Like it was just weird. And I don't want to call a group of people out, but maybe if you have insane healers or something, you can just get around the fact that like dispelling is important. But there's a lot going on, and it's like it's
It's
totally
a chaotic
reasonable to think
fate.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like as a healer, there's a lot of pressure on you. There's only four of you or whatever we had. Yeah, it was like a four heal
Yeah. It's
fight,
for real. Yep.
and it's hard when people are taking failure damage, which will happen a lot more in a guild of like any caliber that's not, top 50, as opposed to like us, where people are standing a shit degree DPS, but don't actually understand how hard it is to heal. I can go on and on, but
Yeah.
going into a fight, just being prepared for every scenario and just having the assignments prepped out and knowing what you need to do in a fight isn't going to make it easy, but at least you don't have that moment of what is going on. Like I think as a guild or as the leadership team of a guild, the officers, so to speak, like if you don't have an idea of what you want to do and how to execute it, the progression is just going to become significantly harder, and it's gonna like
Well, it's
probably throw people off. So you
yeah. It's
need
gonna
to
make you
be
look
you
bad
gotta
too.
understand like hard. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I feel like that was like a big moment for us. It's like we were just wiping on
Yeah.
this what's supposed to be an easy fight, and we just like genuinely were talking to each other, and we were like, I don't know what's going wrong. Like I actually don't know what we can do to fix
I
this.
do remember like sitting in Discord after one night of that fight, and we had like 10 people just like looking at logs. We were like, the dispels are wrong. No, wait, it's not that. It's the tanks they're running into each other. Like, I
Yeah,
was like, what is? Yeah, we were lost, man.
it,
Yeah.
it, it was like a conglomeration of things, but like it was that shit sucks. Like it feels really bad. And I
Yep.
remember because I think I just wasn't. I don't know why, but I guess I went into that tier assuming like we'll just pop off. We just had our best tier and stuff. Like
Yeah.
we got good players, and then we went into it, and it was just like holy shit! Like these early fights are actually much more of a mess than we thought. So obviously you prepare for that more for later fights, but you can take that for granted, I think, and it's
Yep.
important to go into stuff like just you need to go into it expecting the worst and hoping for the best, as people say. But like anything that goes wrong, and I think Tindril is a fight you can map out and you'll know why it goes wrong. It's just a really difficult fight to mechanically execute. But I think we will go into that very prepared. And
Yeah.
I might just write this down right now. Like go into Tindril, like just do every second of prep you can or something. But
Yeah. I mean,
I
it's a fight you can like, plan out like that. The only thing that's like kind of RNG is like the placement of some mechanics, like the feathers or the mushrooms, I guess. But everything else, it's like, you can have a step-by-step guide basically, which, I think is good in a fight like that. There's just so much stuff going on. It's good to have like a guide like per role. It's that fight just like,
yep.
God, it's so freaking ridiculous that fight, man.
Yeah, it is. And also, okay, so I think the last time we had to do this was I remember in Stone Legion Generals, we had to like actually map out DPS cooldowns. I think
Yes.
Tindral will be the first time since then we've had to go back. And that probably in Stone Legion, it's probably because we just sucked. Like we
No,
just
you had
our
to do
damn
that. Like you had to, like I swear every guild to do that because you needed like certain people to single target um the chuck. I don't remember the
the
bleed
Goliath.
people,
It
the
was
Goliath,
the
and then
Goliath.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you had the AOE. You had people that had the AOE, the little three dudes that came
Yeah, and they
down,
popped the shield and stuff.
and
You
then
had to
you
kill them in
needed
time.
yeah, then you needed cooldowns for like the boss, and then you needed cooldowns in the intermission. God, that fight was awful too.
Exactly, and Tindral's kind of I don't think
It's not
nowhere
no, it's
near. It's
nowhere near
not
as
bad
bad.
like Stone
Yeah.
Legion, but this is gonna be the first fight since I think Stone Legion we've had to like be like, okay, for example, me, like I'm a demon, like you are blowing all your AoE stuff on this set of ads, right? Like you're responsible for killing these ad sets. Do you think that's like good or bad design for a boss fight?
Um, I think it can be interesting in fights that a good example I'll give, and I don't think you did this here, but like Lady Ashvane. So she had like these periods where she would have like a large like damage increase taken like for 30 seconds, and you would like assign classes to like, okay, like you guys pop your cooldowns on pull, but everyone else save it for this like large damage phase, and it was only like a minute and a half into the fight, so it's not like you were holding it for that long. I think spots like that, and if the DPS check is really tight, like it was on that fight, like that was a really tight DPS check. I think it can be interesting, and then later on when you have more gear and re-clear it, like it's easier. Like you don't have to like assign as many cooldowns. But I remember re-clearing Stone Legion. I think we did like twice, and we still had to like hard assign like cooldowns to everything. So I think it's hit or miss kind of. I don't like it, I guess, because I feel like you miss more than you hit. But
Yeah.
when it's kind of like seasonal affixes for me. Like sometimes it's like really good, but a lot of the times it's not good. So I guess since it's more miss, I'd prefer if like you don't have to do that, I guess.
Well, yeah, and even think about it from your class perspective, where um we may disagree on this, but your spec is just, and for context, John plays Rep Paladin, so your spec is just not good enough as a sustained big burst AOE that
You are
they
not
don't
doing
even
this right
assign
now, are
you.
you?
Yeah, well, I am, but they just assign you to doing boss damage because that's like the only thing you can do. And I feel like the problem with cooldown assignment bosses is that it just exacerbates the weaknesses of some specs. So Demon Hunter, for example, and they've nerfed it a good amount of times to the point it just, I think, makes Tendril harder because like Demon Hunters in World First would just solo multiple sets of ads. Like you'd have this Demon Hunter do all their AoE CDs on this set, and you wouldn't really have to think about it. And then you'd have that Demon Hunter do the next one. Then you have intermissions, so like a cooldown cycle again and stuff. But now that we're like at this point, I feel like any fight, and I felt the same way about Stone Legion, is that when we were doing it as the terrible world 1300 guild that we were, like I as a Windwalker in that tier was popping all my CDs on the Goliath because it like we were just running into the end rage of the Goliath where we were
Yeah.
wiping. So I was just like, I have to hold my cooldowns and just like burst, like just single target burst this guy. And maybe that's like, you're also in when you're in lower rank guilds, people probably play more selfishly and are just like as boss killing
Oh, for
oriented. But
sure.
regardless, that it just poses the same problem across any boss that does this, where you have to like assign seasons. Same thing with like we have some Fury Warriors who probably want to, regardless of how boss oriented killing they are, at least when we talk about it, they're
Just want
gonna
to
want to parse,
own
right?
the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they just want to blast. So like they're tempted to just hold their cooldowns a little longer and do this and that. And I think Tindril is an awesome boss fight for like really good guilds, but for people like us, it's kind of like it blends into that like, oh, it's just gonna be hard for unnecessary reasons. And so
Yeah, that's a good
that kind of
point.
part if they
Yeah.
could nerf, like where I don't, like me as a demon hunter, I don't have to hold my cooldowns for or play us like this
Play a certain build or
really
whatever, right?
just
Yeah.
janky, just do as much damage and mass AoE as possible at a minute into the fight is like, like that kind of stuff. Like it'd be cool if I could just do whatever I want and just like burst around them. And item level, I don't think fixes it because I think it's clear that like a ton of people are still stuck on Tindril. Like, how many people have even killed that
I
boss?
think like two,
Uh,
300 or something. Maybe not even that many.
Let me look. No, I don't think it's that much. 123 people have killed
Oh,
Tindril.
that's it. Wow.
Honestly, only 602 people have killed Smolderon. So like
Well, yeah, we were at
that's
like five. We dropped 100 ranks last
yeah,
week, so
it's just
yeah.
not that much. Like that's what I mean. Like these last three bosses are hard
Dude,
hitters.
we're
Like
about
they're
to do we're
very
about to do so much prep. We're gonna end up on Fire Rock at like World 300.
35 people have killed Firac,
Yeah,
which
it's
I don't know if
hard.
that's normal for a tier. What are we in, like 7 weeks in now?
No, it's not that
That's a
many.
hard.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I think that's just a hard fight.
This will be week 6 coming up. Yeah. Wow. I mean, yeah, I think probably after the holidays they'll probably do some more nerfs, right? Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Um. No. Yeah, I agree. Like I like what you said earlier. It's a hard fight. It's a hard fight for good reasons for better guilds like World First guilds, but then it's a hard fight for those reasons and also unnecessary reasons for guilds like ours. I completely agree with that.
Exactly. Yeah, like it just becomes and I think that ties back to like what we're talking about private hours and stuff. Like it's hard for different reasons, and then as it scales, like as to comes to people like us who are just, your everyday
Average
mythic
Andies.
raiders, which are already yeah, average Andes exactly, which are outside the norm anyways. Like we're in the top. Not many people kill mythic bosses. Like it's a very small fraction of the World of Warcraft
Oh
community,
yeah.
and now you're making mechanics specifically for them, and it just gets harder as you lower in skill. And so it's like, who are really tuning this around? Or if you want to do that, if you want to purposely make stuff like this harder for topping guilds, that's fine, but change the right things, I think, before the
Yes.
masses get.
There's gonna be someone that just cannot do the dragon riding. I'm just
Of
calling that
course.
now. Like it's gonna be like
Yeah, like the
every
group.
5 pulls, like some like that same person's just gonna fuck it up or something.
Yeah, in case any of our fucking 8 viewers don't know, you have to jump up on a dragon while you're doing the main phase. Like not like flying between platforms, like during every single platform you have to have people jump up and go
And
onto their
hit a fire
dragons
orb.
and hit stuff, or you just wipe. It's just over. If they mess it up and it's not that easy, if they mess it up, it's over. Like you just wipe.
Yep.
Blows up and kills you all. So it's just one of those fights where there's some. Honestly, that kind of thing, that's a cool pass fail mechanic, honestly. Like you have to go up and dragon ride, and I think that's kind of cool, but at the same time that
We'll see.
I think that feels bad to wipe
We'll
too.
see. Well, yeah, it's like one of those things like Halandrish bombs or like fire X seeds, I guess. Not that similar, but like definitely Halandrish bombs. Like you're doing fine. You have like just one person fucks up slightly, and the whole raid just explodes. So
Yep.
but not. I guess it's kind of cool, but you're not gonna like that mechanic like 200, 300 pulls in. So
Yep.
yeah. But,
I guess the last bit we can talk about is same bit is how to make a lost time and learning from mistakes. We've talked about this, I think, in a large part, but
hmm
um, it's how do you think, at least from a perspective where you're giving advice, how do you make up lost time if you really struggled on a boss and you want to move forward and do better?
um. I mean, one option is like extending earlier, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
like we talked about already, definitely like just over preparing as much as possible. Um, over communicating with your team. I mean, other than that, it's not like I mean another option, and it's not something that we do, but recruiting better players. Um,
Yeah.
that's something that a lot of guilds do. They just keep, I mean, we're always like recruiting, obviously, but like some people are like really like always just recruiting. They're just looking to replace the worst person all at all times, and like your spot's never safe if you're like the lowest performer. Um, and I mean, at least luckily for our guild, I don't think there's like that much of a deviation between the top performer and the worst performer. So I think we're kind of like lucky in that regards. I mean, obviously we have people that play better than others, but I don't think it's too bad. But I mean, that's another option. Guilds just, they just poach people, recruit people, replace people. That's an option to make up lost time. What else? What else? You got anything? I'm trying to think.
Well, yeah, I think just also understanding your weaknesses as a guild, like
Oh,
where things go
for
wrong,
sure.
like knowing what mechanics going to be hardest and stuff, like just prepping extra for that and just knowing how to deal with it, or at least having an idea before you go into a fight of guessing where things are going to be hardest and then adapting to it as you go on and telling people what to do is a big part of being successful as a lower rank guild where you're obviously going to have weaker players.
I can literally watch a PTR footage of a boss or like a kill video of a PTR boss or read the dungeon journal and just say like we are never killing that boss. Like
Yep.
I thought that on Skarn and I was right. It took us so many friggin' pulls. Luckily, I didn't think of that on any of the bosses in here, but I also thought that about Dathia. Sure enough, another ridiculous pulls for us. I don't know. It's just if you're in a guild long enough, like you know what you're gonna struggle with, and we always struggle with like the dumbest things. Like what was that one in Sepulcher? Sausage. It's just like
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
so
yeah.
bad at
Awesome, yeah.
we're just bad at stuff like that. We're bad at
Yeah, you have to dodge 2 rings. You have to figure out a way,
we're
and it's so
yeah.
easy, but it's so hard at the same
We're
time.
bad at like personal responsibility fights. We're really good at like strategy fights and like movement fights, I guess. Like doing like a dance fight, I think is our strengths. But like yeah, personal responsibility, we are just woof. We are
I
not
feel
made
like
for
yeah,
that.
and that's got to be the norm across
Probably
the world
yeah.
of Warcraft is that it's really hard to any fight where there's a lot of adaptability. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like even I think of a fight like Nimue where like me as a demon hunter, like and it's too late in the patch where you think you have to play like no movie stuff. So like I'm dashing around and there's a very high chance even me like I'm getting hit by shit that I shouldn't be because I'm just like, jumping around and
Yeah,
stuff.
doing
Like
dumb shit.
but the you think of that and expand it to anything, it's like there's always gonna be stuff like that and you can't really teach it, but any fight where you can plan for it, that's where you should be the most prepared and that should be your strengths as a fight. Or at least if you want to get better as a guild, that should be your best point is where there's a fight where you pure it's like just all around planning and
Hmm.
having assignments and stuff, that's where you can aim to improve the most. Any fight where it's based on adaptability of players and stuff, you just kind of have to accept that you're not always going to have people who are the best at that and it's going to struggle a little bit. And so you should kind of make up your weaknesses in the fact that you can prepare for stuff
Yeah, you can make up
that
lost
is
time. Yep.
obvious. Yeah, exactly. Like us, we can make up a lot on even Tendril where we're having like seed assignments where on Mythic you can only soak one and
Yeah.
everyone has to soak one. Or not everyone, but most people have to soak one and stuff. But all the other parts of the fight where you just have to live the beams and this and that and whatever. You have to do enough damage to meet the checks or break people out of routes. Like that's going to take a little bit to learn, but anything that we can plan for, we will be prepared for, right? And
Yeah, and
the
one thing
adaptability part is just going to take a little bit.
I was thinking of the other day on like these harder uh prog fights, like where you're basically like progging like, phases instead of like the fight, like Razag at phase one, intermission, whatever.
Hmm.
Instead of just like I'm sure other guilds do this, but I don't know. Like I know we have like a healing cooldown sheet. I'm sure it's like made for the whole fighter. It's made for phase one, but like we should like make a sheet where it's like we're overloaded on cooldowns. Like if it's a fight like that, like Sarkareth P1's a good example where like you send all your cooldowns in phase one, but you don't do that for every fight. So like I'm sure the healing cooldown sheet is like spaced out properly, but why not like in a fight that's like hard in phase one instead of like spacing it out how you would have it on the kill pool. Like why not just like
Yeah.
overload the front of it with like CDs so you can like live more like shit that people obviously learn how to dodge the beams, but not the beginning. So like, if you were gonna save aura mastery for later, like just use it on the first beams or something so people that get hit don't get one shot, stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah. And I will say, like, healers are maybe the most stubborn people to work with of all time. Like,
They are not gonna like to hear that.
I think they need to hear it. Like, they're just hard to work with. Like, I don't know why. Okay. So, a DPS player dies a lot or something, or is just not doing their job, or maybe like me, even for example, like maybe I die a lot on a fight. Like I know that, and if someone tells me like, "Hey, you're dying a lot," and maybe it doesn't happen as much anymore because of my position, but like I understand the whole time that like I'm making mistakes, but I feel like I think it's just a stress of healing. I think healing is just harder because you have there's only so many of you, and it becomes very apparent and everyone wants to blame you and it creates this weird dynamic, but it healing is a big deal and it's hard to really communicate even, and I feel like that's a completely different game than DPS because like for us we're just slamming the whole time, we're just doing whatever we want, we're just like,
Mouth
dude,
open, staring at my
I'm
bart.
not gonna say what I want to say, but I'm just plowing this boss right now, and like like
Starts
it,
with a
it just feels
J.
so good. Yeah, it starts with a J, but it's just like for healers it's so dynamic, I feel like every pull, and it's also hard to give them like keep them in good spirit because like any of us die and we're just like if it's a bad situation where maybe they were also messing up so they're keeping themselves up and then you die because like they're looking at themselves.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the hardest, that's the true mystery of the game is trying to not only get good healers, 'cause I think we have good healers, but it's just also trying to keep them happy because like every time we die, we're like, if you look pull up your death log, you're like, oh, 4 seconds,
You
no heal.
cannot say
Like you
that.
just
You
can't. Yeah, you
cannot
see.
say that.
Yeah, but you're just always like, oh shit, man, I died because like I bled out. But you also don't know what's going on, and that's also the hardest part of um these like I feel like mythic rating is that DPS. There's so much more of them, and they're also so much easier to come by. A good one,
Mhm.
or at least an average, permissible one, that it's easier to do. But healers are like
Well, it's like
that's tough, man.
Oh, it's also like you don't notice the mistakes like the lower the ranks you go, not the guild ranks, but like roles, I guess. So, there's like 14 DPS in a raid. Okay, one person makes a mistake, you might not notice it. There's four healers in a raid. Okay, they make a mistake and miss a cooldown. Like you're probably gonna notice that. Two tanks in a raid, one of them fucks something, like you notice and the tank fucks up.
Yep,
Like like it just
yep,
goes down the chain of like, okay, DPS, so whatever. Healers, okay, you guys definitely fucked up. Tanks, holy shit, yeah,
yeah,
that's for sure. I agree with that
exactly. Like,
100%.
but like DPS, you only realize they mess up if they die,
Mhm.
and you can't like because we are all doing our thing and trying to do damage, but you can't even tell unless you're playing the same spec as someone like, oh, you mess this up. And even then, like, no one's gonna say that. Like, hey, dude, I just like opened way harder than you did. Like, that would just be cringe. Like, if you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
dude, yo, this 30-second pull, I just fucking gapped you on. Like, no one's gonna say that. So, as a healer and stuff, and that's the other hard part is that you have to manage healers and like deal with them, and it's just
yeah.
uh, it's hard. It actually
There's a reason
genuinely
there's a
is.
separate healer channel.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to take care. You have to treat them differently.
Yeah, my little snowflakes.
Okay, so we're gonna go into I have some holiday trivia for you.
Oh shit.
What's your favorite in World of Warcraft? Not in real life, because I know you're weird like that, but what is your favorite Christmas mog?
Christmas mog?
Yeah,
I like I don't know if this counts, but I like the gnome thing in Stormwind.
it does not count.
Come on, man. I
Okay,
actually
fine, we'll
no no no.
count that.
I like the sweater. The sweater.
The sweater is yeah, that is good.
I like my
That I
mage.
like that a lot.
My mage has a sweater on and like these red pants. I don't know where I got them, and like the candy cane sword and a Santa hat. I love that.
Okay,
That's my favorite.
okay. I would say my favorite mog is especially as a demon hunter or
I like your demon hunters mog.
any melee class that can wield both of them. You have the two candy canes that just came out from the training post. You have
Yep.
those, and then you have this is optional at the top, but you can have the tailored Santa hat.
Yep.
Only the tailored one though. The old
The
one,
old one's not good.
ass. Yeah,
Yeah.
not good. But then you can have the Santa outfit, especially on a uh, maybe controversial, I guess, but like that you have to have a female character. It's a bit. It looks good.
It's getting kind of horny in here.
Yeah, exactly. So that looks good. Anything else? Holiday transmog? I don't. I think
Um,
that's it.
I
Sweater or skimpy Santa suit.
Dude, the old Santa hat looks like your head's getting scalped. It's so fun. It's like so
Yeah, it
bad.
looks bad.
You
Yeah,
can
it
just
looks
tell
really bad.
it's from 2004. Yeah.
It just doesn't look good.
No, not at all.
Okay. I'm gonna take you into a very serious topic here. Okay.
Okay. I'm ready.
What do you think? Okay, so we I think me and you both agree that like classic WoW in its entirety is just not that fun to deal with. Like it's just when you go back, and I think actually Wrath is the perfect example of this where by the time Wrath hit, there was like modernized mechanics, but at the same time, as a retail player, it was just like, why am I doing this? Like, yes, it's cool. And I played an enhancement shaman, for example, that has like maelstrom weapon and stuff. I think the most modernized class in that state of WoW. And so it was like, oh, this is cool. Like I actually have a fluent rotation. It's like kind of button mashy. That's like the bottom tier of retail WoW. First, you haven't really played it, but even the idea, like Season of Discovery, as a retail WoW raider, do you think Season of Discovery is cool, or do you think it's a flop and is
I
just only for the appeal
I
of
will have
classic?
you know that I have a level 9 rep paladin in season discovery as of yesterday.
On Alliance.
Yes.
That is so cool.
I actually you yeah, you're level 25, right? You have a character?
Yeah. I've
I
done the raid.
I tell you, I got this item to use my judgment 10 times and I got fucking Crusader Strike and I thought that shit was cool, man. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, "Holy shit, I get Crusader Strike?" 'Cause like I haven't read anything on it. I didn't know what the hell like the different I honestly didn't even know like there were runes in it. I just knew there was like a different raid and like some classes were different, but that's like pretty much all I knew. So like I like logged on and it was like level 4. I got this quest to
Hmm.
do this thing and I got Crusader Strike and I was like, "Holy shit, that's cool." But I mean people love it. I think it's a cool idea. I think it's good for the game. It's like a fourth version of WoW that they have. I mean, if you look at like the price of the retail sub, it hasn't changed since they launched the game, and you can get 4 versions of WoW with it now. So I mean,
Yep.
I think the more stuff they do with the game, they get more people to play. Whether it's, I mean, I know retail players flame classic players and vice versa, but I think and the more versions of WoW that they have to keep more players, the better. And I think the stuff that they've done with Season of Discovery is cool. I like the new rate. I like how they changed it up because that's like the one thing with Classic for me. Like I did that shit already. Like it just feels stale to me. Like even I played Wrath Classic with you guys a little bit, and like
Yep.
I mean it was cool for a little bit, but I after like one raid I'm like all right I don't really want to do it anymore type of deal. But yeah I think it's cool. I think it's cool to recycle used content and make it like something new for sure. I think it's a good job Blizzard for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there's no way you couldn't. I don't think everyone was clamoring for Classic, but Classic just became my problem with Classic is that the mystery is all gone and it's now all like
It's like
min
retail but
max.
classic.
Yes, it is. And it just takes the whole fun of what was out of what is now. And that to me is just not fun. Like even when I raid on Wrath, I'm like, oh, I want to do as much damage as possible, but it just actually comes down to your gear and stuff.
Yeah.
And so you have these people who are like,
Oh, they're
yo, do
juice,
this like
dude.
on Wrath, it's like ICC 10 or something, ICC 25, link logs or something. And it's like, I know all this. And you do ICC, especially someone who plays retail, and it's like it's just not hard. I think until the Lich King, which maybe I'll ask you in a second, but the point is like it's just really simple, but you can't do it even as a retail player who just wants to kind of log on to Classic and have fun. Like it just became the same thing as retail, where instead of like mythic rating being the barrier, now even doing normal or heroic is the barrier and shit. So season discovery coming out, I think was awesome. And I don't know how min max it's become or like how much gatekeeping people do, but it's I think it's been awesome. Like on my little feral druid, I have mangle and stuff, and even though I go into raids and just like spam one button, it's just been fun to do with people, and like your classes are more leveled up. There's obviously always going to be a meta, but I feel like
And
that's the best version of Classic WoW I've ever seen.
one
I
thing
do
I
not
like
want to
about it too
Classic WoW at all.
is like the level, like how they like the only 25 is the
Yes,
cap now, and then
level
40s.
bucketing.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Wait, so you don't think Wrath Classic's hard? The raids? Because Heroic Marowak might
No,
be the hardest boss I ever
I
pulled
I
in
do
my
think
life.
I actually after watching stuff, I do think um not being serious. I think Heroic Lich King is as hard as some early mythic bosses in terms of what you have to work with and what it is, because the mechanics in Wrath were about like if you okay, so the mechanics aren't that hard by themselves, but if you mess them up, it's the whole thing that people complained about is like pass fail.
Yeah.
If you mess something up on Lich King, heroic Lich King specifically, just over. Like the pull is over.
Yep.
And you have 25 people doing it. So that there's a lot of mythic fights, especially early on. I would compare, I think, based off what I've watched, and I haven't done it, but I think Heroic Lich King is the equivalent to like the second or third boss of a mythic raid
Well, I
on
mean,
average, but that can vary.
that's like when the fight, Cataclysms, like when they started ramping it up, and then, obviously Mop had like really good raid designs and stuff.
Yeah.
'Cause like Ragnaros was like a really like hard mythic fight, I remember. So like definitely like the end of Wrath and like Kata going forward, I think is like when the fights started like really getting hard. But yeah, not to go back.
But if you even think of like heroic fights, like for us, like when we go into a new raid, this
Yeah.
raid specifically, even on Fire Act, like the only pass fail wipe check was on Fire Act, probably the seeds. And
The tendril, the seeds too.
well, yeah, but that's more of like a collective effort. So yeah, yeah, I guess Tindral and Fire Act, like you would wipe if you didn't hit the seeds, but I think classic WoW is more about there's these mechanics, and if you don't do them, you just wipe. But they're not that hard.
I also
So it's kind
think
of a trade-off.
I also think what makes Wrath hard, not hard, I guess per se, but the perception of it being hard is like the player base is just, you got people in there like Captain Whoop Ass, and
Oh
that makes up
my
like
god.
60% of your player base. So like it's
That
just
that does definitely make it
that makes it
70% harder.
yeah,
Like I think oh
makes
fuck,
it
is it
artificially
Rot Face or
harder.
Sludge? I think it's Rot Face with the one boss in classic where you have to all the mechanic is you have to
Oh,
get
the
a
with the
debuff,
slimes and you run out
yes,
and get
and run it
dispelled.
out.
Yeah,
And watching that and doing it
yeah.
was insane. Like watching people sit in melee after they got dispelled and having the slime in melee and you wipe and then
And then they get hit by the
the
thing, the
the
slime.
the burn on top of the wipe in classic is that you have to run back and shit, and it's not even that long in wrath, but that like 15
That's so
second fly
annoying.
back to ICC is just like, dude, which one of these motherfuckers like fucked this up? Like it's just so bad.
Yeah.
But you know, and it's fine. We don't have to delve
Yeah.
too much into that.
I just
I
think it
love
makes it
both versions of the
artificially
game.
harder, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I like about Season of Discovery is that uh, I don't think you can get around the fact that Classic WoW is easy because you know what's gonna happen. Like that's 90% of the battle in retail WoW is that they release new fights. There are some strats that come out, but like they're for the world first guilds will do them, but you don't have players to back up that kind of gameplay. So you have
Yeah.
to kind of either wait for someone to adapt it or just make your own thing.
I also think like just to top this off, but for like classic WoW and Season of Discovery, I mean the game it's just an older game, that they're using the engine. It just like can't do the things that modern WoW can.
Yep.
So I mean that's another reason why it's easier, but that doesn't mean it's worse. So just different.
Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is Mythic Plus,
Okay.
and I will say I have done most things on like 25s, 26s, and I've even at like I've heard this be repeated, and we talked about it before this, but
Humble
there
brag.
gets a point in Mythic Plus where you have like the barrier of not communicating is very high. Like if you don't have pure communication is not that high, or alternatively, you just have a vengeance demon hunter that can basically control the whole dungeon for you on their own. Um, how do you feel about that
Dude, you put on a
in the balance of Mythic Plus?
you put on a clinic with that Demon Hunter, dude. I I think that is, what Vengeance Demon Hunter can do right now is like ridiculous. Like you can just lock down like we did that throne the other night, and I was like, dude, you just like did everything yourself for this whole pack on like a 25. Like I mean, I think it's good you have some options, but to me, Vengeance Demon Hunter, they just have so many options. Like they have too many options. I felt useless in that pool. You were like, okay, I'm gonna need. Oh, never mind, I got this. Okay, after this one, oh, never mind, I got Sound Sigil back. Oh, I got Fear Sigil. I was like, dude, whatever. I mean, I guess I can just DPS, but that's part of the fun of Mythic Plus is like coordinating stops.
Yeah, it's
But
like coordinating. Yeah,
yeah, so I
but at the
mean,
same time, like in pugs, when you can't communicate,
okay, yes, I'll give you
how do
that.
you feel about that?
I'll give you that. If you have a tank that can like just lock, I mean that's awesome. And in pugs, because that shit, you're wiping to that shit. But I do think at least Vengeance is a little too strong utility wise. Right now, I mean, what they have like two silent sigils, and fear
Yep.
sigil, sigil chains. It's like they have a stun too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like Avengers alone can stop. Okay,
You have
so
like
on
six
their own, with
stops.
those sigils, with chains, silence, and misery, you have six stops, and those get CDR when you press those buttons. Like
Yeah.
every sigil you hit reduces the
Oh, the
cooldown
other
of your
ones,
other
right?
sigils.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that is overloaded, but it's hard because we talked about this before, like, um, I don't think key should well, I don't know. It's a balance because if you want things to get to the point they're difficult for people who are communicating and like trying to push the hardest, then you need stuff that's like you need to communicate. If one cast goes off, you wipe. But at the same time, for a majority of pugs, they're just not going to have that communication. So like, how do you find the line between we want to tune things between who is pushing the highest and the average community is just trying to, go as high as they can without communicating.
Right now, I don't really think that's an issue, because I mean, obviously it is an issue, but people that want to push the higher keys, like that's part of the game. Like you gotta eventually you gotta get in comms with people, and like once you get high enough, you gotta run with like the same group the whole like for a bunch of different keys.
Yep.
And like at least for now, until Blizzard adds like some other type of reward, the only two rewards for Mythic Plus are Keystone Master at what 2000 score, and
Yeah.
then rank one
Yep.
at like what's gonna be like 3700 or something this season.
Yeah.
And that's just like a feat of strength. Like, you don't get anything out of it. There's no like mount. I mean, there's a title, but a lot of people don't care about that. Like, there's no mount. There's no like transmog set. Like, if they added another transmog set or a transmog set or something for getting like all 23s done or 24s or 25s, then I would think that they maybe need to address something where
I,
like people are gonna want to pug it to get the transmog set, so we need to like address you know the need for like over communication in keys, I guess.
I think yeah, and I think I was like typing in like dorky stream or something the other night because he was talking about this, and I think that's like a necessity. Like, if you want the game to be competitive, because the thing for me is like I always think of games like Counter Strike or Valorant that require you to talk.
Mhm.
And I know there's other games like League of Legends where you don't have to talk and stuff, and like the solo queue at the highest level is no communication. You're just basically going about, but they're like so different in nature. I feel like WoW is one of those games where like once you get to a certain level, everyone is trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And the highest groups, there is no highest time key without voice. Like it doesn't exist.
Right.
There's no
Yep.
one who's like, this is my 33 thrown to the tides without comms. Like that's never gonna happen because
No.
you have to talk about kicking and stuff. And like there's so much stuff that's coordinated. And so I don't think it's bad that they balance around that because they can do both. Like at the highest level, you have to talk, but at the casual level, you can just kind of get by and let stuff go off, even if it
Yeah,
happens.
to like do you can even do that in like your 20s, like to get your Great Ball
Yeah.
rewards. And another thing you can do, like, you can just like have an auto marker, and if you're not in voice, you can just be like, okay, I always kick triangle, you always kick circle, you always kick star, and like that's just like a basic level too of like doing keys without communication on a higher
Yeah,
level. Like
you can
obviously,
even type that. You could type
yeah,
that.
yep. Yeah, so I mean there are ways for sure, but you're right, like you're not doing the highest keys without being in voice, and I don't think that's like an issue that Blizzard should have to worry about. Like it's an exponential growing, scaling thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to keep pushing and there are things where you need to have super coordination, it's like trying to do a mythic raid boss without like Discord, like it's just not gonna happen, right? So
Yeah, if you want to do it, you should be required to talk about
yeah.
it, I think. I think like I feel like that's the norm in
Like people
anything. If
like
you
you
want
think
to do an event where
Like, are
you
you
have to
just seeing people
communicate, you should have to
complain?
communicate.
Like, you think people, like, you just see people complaining that, like, oh, it's so hard to pug keys, like, over
Yeah.
25. Like, yeah, it is gonna be hard. It's supposed to be hard. It's like, it gets harder, exponentially every time you go up a level. So, like, at some point, you should be required to go in voice and, like, start playing with the same group. It's not Blizzard's fault you're, like, fucking antisocial, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's not Blizzard's fault. You're scared to jump into Discord and be like, I got diamond. I
And
got
you
left."
don't even need to talk. Like, someone can just, like, shot call, I don't know.
Yeah,
People are
exactly.
definitely, like, very very weird with that stuff in
I
this
I
game.
I will say though, like playing as Vengeance Demon Hunter, like you in most dungeons, you have um oh man, how do I say this? When you do it without a Vengeance Demon Hunter, like when I switch from Vengeance to Havoc and I do the same key, it is very clear that people are like crutching on the Vengeance control.
Mhm.
Like people just don't want to like they don't pay attention to kicks. they don't do this and that, and even like good players, like they're very
Well, they don't need to, and they're hitting the
dependent.
keys with their
Uh,
vengeance.
I know exactly. Like you just rely. Like, you're like, oh, I don't have to worry about it. Like I'm just gonna blast, and
Yep.
then that's the thing that you play like a prop pally, which has a ton of kicks, but just
Nothing
not
like
as much. Like
vengeance. Yeah.
not like a 6 second or 8 second sigil that just nothing can cast for 8 seconds. It depends on the anyways. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I think vengeance is a little too strong right now, but I also think like they should probably like give a little like some. If you're gonna give vengeance, if vengeance is gonna have it like that, like I mean, give something else to some of the other tanks. I don't know. Like why can't like Bear use like beam, something like
that
that?
would
I
be
don't know.
cool. That would be actually sick. If Bearcrews beam, that would be sick.
Yeah, like stuff like that. I like Pally. I mean, Pally has a lot, like you said, a lot of good stuff. Like um, I think like Warrior Shockwave. I guess like they could use something else. Like oh they I guess they have mass silence, but it's like on 2 minute cooldown,
Well,
right?
well, even think about warrior. You think of the context in Mythic Plus, and some specs just aren't viable. Somebody's like, so this week there's a corporeal warrior can't
Oh
help with
yeah.
that unless they are they in talent like
They can fear
the
it, but
fear
but it
that
doesn't even
gets to
last
the
the
point.
entire time.
Yeah, that like I think every spec, if they're gonna make affixes like that, they should have every spec be able to deal with it, like
Yeah,
every single one.
yeah, I agree. I think my prediction for the next expansion is they're gonna like completely rework affixes or maybe even like get rid of them. They're gonna do something with them because I
I'd
don't
be
think
cool with
I
that.
don't think anybody's like happy with how they work right now. Most people hate like most affixes, and it's like you're not like ever looking forward to doing an affix like you were with some of the seasonals. Like I know you didn't play Reaping, but Reaping was fun, and like the one what was the one with and all them oh no,
Uh,
not Awaken, that was BFA.
it was like encrypted.
Encrypted, yeah. Like you were looking forward to playing Encrypted, like getting the woe buff and skipping shit and the other side, or just getting a lot of you're blasting with the cooldown reduction. Like you were looking forward to playing that. The only reason I'm looking forward to playing Bursting and Volcanic is because it's like the least fucking annoying affixes out of the bunch, right? So
Yeah, Shealer affix.
yeah, so I think they're gonna change that, but yeah. Anything else?
Sheesh. One sec. No.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, all 8 of you. Lenny, not sure if you're
Yep.
watching this from Africa, but if you are,
Always
thank
got to
you.
shout out Lenny.
Shout out to
Thanks for
Lendog.
watching,
Thanks
Lenny.
for the honey, man. Appreciate it.
The honey
Um,
was good.
yeah, it was really good. Anything else? Any other shout outs, Sindul? Anything?
Everyone in the guild, but no.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and maybe you'll see us again in what 2 to 3 weeks, maybe. I don't know. We'll
We'll
see how
see.
it's going, I guess.
Play live.
Yes, sir. All right, everyone. Thanks. Goodbye. Bye, Lenny.